Good morning and welcome to our next episode of Leadership and Uncertainty. My name is Manish Wadhwa. I'm the founder of Humanity in Business. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Today we've got a very interesting and exciting speaker, Danielle Edwards from Gallup, who's going to be sharing her perspective on the needs of followers, which is a very interesting concept. Before we jump in, just want to tell you quickly about Humanity in Business. We're really focused on, and I'm really been passionate about leadership and building leadership capability. Humanity in Business is really about sharing stories of great leaders and thought leaders who are going to be telling what great leadership looks like. And particularly in this time of high amount of uncertainty, I think understanding more about what does it take to actually lead people through these uncertain times is really critical. So I've been sharing those stories of leaders for the past 7 years. That's what Humanity in Business does. Our other corporate partner or a key sponsor is Communiteer, and Communiteer is a online skill volunteering platform which helps corporates access charity projects to enable deeper collaboration between the corporate sector and the charity sector to create shared value. So that's really who's hosting the day today, myself and Humanity Business and Communiteer. So I'd like to really, on that note, invite Danielle. Danielle's been with Gallup for over 2 years and with a background in corporate and very passionate about leadership development, just like I am. So welcome to the show, Danielle. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Manish. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here today.
Awesome, great, thank you. So we really basically the event is really the session is really more about having conversations rather than a one-way talk. So really hear about engaging yourself as well as Danielle. She's shared some slides on PDF, which is for you to download at your end, and she will then talk to those slides whilst you can scroll them onto your computer as well. The slides look much better on your computer than it would look on our screen over here. So hence we decided to send it to you in advance, and she can read through those slides and run you through them as if she's having it shared on her screen. So that's the kind of a different format today. But without further ado, I'd like to invite you, Danielle, and tell us a bit more about yourself and share your story.
Thank you so much. Well, it was a lovely introduction. My name is Danielle Edwards. I'm the Regional Director for Australia here at Gallup. For those of you who are not familiar with Gallup as an organisation, we are the largest research company on the planet. And Gallup's whole mission and purpose really is to understand what people are thinking, feeling, and how they're behaving. And we build programs for leadership development primarily and employee engagement based on the research that we do. So today I've got the wonderful opportunity to talk through some of the research we've done around leadership, certainly around leadership in times of uncertainty. We've been conducting research since the 1930s, so there's been a number of significant world events that have happened over that time, and how leaders step up in such a critical time as we are experiencing now is really important. So hopefully you've all got the slide deck in front of you. What I'm going to do is just really talk through these slides probably for about 20 minutes and then open up for questions. There's also a bit of interaction as we go along, and Manish, if you wanted to stop me and ask a question, if you're seeing anything coming through on chat, please do so.
Okay, happy to, no problem.
Thank you. So what employees need from leaders during a crisis. Gallup has a best-selling book called Strengths-Based Leadership, and we did some significant research on what are the needs of followers when it comes to great leadership. And we conducted a study of about 10,000 people to understand what it is that makes a great leader. And, you know, obviously in times of uncertainty, we need our leaders to be pillars of strength. And there are some key ways that leaders can really show up and provide that sense of security to the people that they lead. So I just wanted to, I'm on page 3 at the moment, and I wanted to do a little activity. And Manish, if you could shout out some of the words that are coming through the chat room. But the purpose of this activity, I guess, is to help you understand the research that we did around the needs of followers. And we asked 2 questions to approximately 10,000 people. And that was, what leader has had the most positive influence on your daily life? And what 3 words best describe what this person has contributed to your life?
Right.
So what I'd ask you to do is, sorry, Manish.
Yeah, go on. I was just saying, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'd ask you to do is think about someone who is a great leader in your life and put down some key words that come to mind that describe that leader.
Right.
And how they've been a positive influence. I'd love to hear what's coming through. What defines a great leader? We got any words coming through in chat?
Humility, that's one for me, which is a big one. What else do we have? I think courage. I think people are a bit shy to come online, but I'm just throwing out some words which always stand out for me in terms of leadership.
Yeah. Compassion.
Yes, compassion for sure.
Integrity.
Yep. I think there's words are there. I think people are really trying to see the actions is what they want to see. What does that look like in the doing perspective?
Yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing about these emotive words that we talk about when it comes to great leadership is you would rarely describe a great leader as someone who, was exceptional at, forecasting sales targets. There's just not things that come to mind when you think about a great leader. You think about what they bring as a human.
Yep.
And so moving on to page 4, from that research that we did, we identified these 4 key needs of followers, and that is trust, compassion, stability, and hope. And I really would love to challenge all those leaders that are on the call today to think about the way you communicate as a leader through these 4 lenses, because they're very intertwined, and they're simple concepts to understand, but they're things that sometimes may get lost in all the noise of the doing and trying to deal with the challenges that we have at the moment. So moving on to the next slide, just want to think about followership for a moment, it's an interesting word. I guess I challenge you to think a little differently about that word, why it's so powerful and important when it comes to understanding leadership. Being a follower is not showing a sign of weakness. It's showing a sign of strength when you understand as a leader what you are following. If you think of great leaders like Nelson Mandela or Mother Teresa, they were leaders who led through a sense of something bigger than themselves. Yep. So they were able to sort of step outside of themselves and lead people in a direction that built hope and trust and compassion. So and a lot less about, do I lead to control people versus am I a leader who is here to serve others, which is really important. So trust, I'm just going to take you through these 4 things briefly, but with enough context so you can wrap your head around it. Trust, obviously, we all know what trust means, but trust with the leaders and their employees. There needs to be mutual respect, respect, honesty, and integrity. Um, when we study, and Gallup does a lot of work studying what do high performing teams look like, and we know that high performing teams rarely ever discuss trust because they live it, and they have that innate trust because they have a leader that allows them to be their best every day. We know that low performing teams talk about it constantly, and it can become very toxic, and that just erodes performance and trust even further. So leaders have the ability to trust through their actions. And, something I saw, Manish, that's been really interesting with some of the companies that we work with through this COVID-19 situation. So many of our clients, as all of you on this call will relate to, had to move very swiftly getting their people into homes and working efficiently and effectively out of their houses.
Yep.
Not all industries, but a huge majority. And what was so fascinating, watching the ways different organisations coped with this, and you could see the differences in leadership from the conversations we were having. So there were companies, particularly companies that have been around for a really long time, that might be a little set in their ways. They were having a really difficult time, managers in particular, having a really difficult time not being able to see people.
Yeah.
So having to trust that they were getting the work done.
Yeah.
And without that trust, that creates a real shift in dynamic within the team. If you as a manager think that just being able to see people
Yep.
in an office gives you the security that people are getting something done versus having that trust in people to drive their own activity.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating how that can erode.
So how do you think that it was a big issue around the visibility piece? Is that the old school paradigm of I can see you, so now I trust you, you're doing your work? Is that what people are thinking?
Yes.
It's as simple as that. You're here, so I know you're working.
So I know you're working. And yes, I have an interesting story of a CEO of a very large Australian company.
Yep.
He's no longer the CEO anymore, but when he was very much that command and control culture that we're all trying to move away from now. And his office was strategically placed in the building where he could see his staff coming in and out of the building.
Right.
And he would stand there at the end of the day and mark off on a list the people that left right on the dot of 5 versus the ones that stayed back till 6. And that was his way of visually seeing who was committed and who wasn't.
Yeah, right.
So we want to move away from that. We need to be able to trust people to be able to get their work done. And our research shows that working from home actually can be more productive than working in an office.
Yeah.
Just got to give people the tools with which to do it, the trust, and you've got to have the right communication strategy to make sure that you're connecting with people really regularly.
Yeah.
That is really essential.
Yeah. So the more you're in conversations, how does that communication not look like you're checking in on them because they're remote versus checking in because you just want to see how they're doing? Is there,
Yeah, great question. I think, when we go back to the 4 pillars, I guess, of good leadership, we have trust, hope, stability, and compassion. And I think as a leader, if you can be compassionate towards your teammates and connect in a genuine way, then it creates, those walls can be broken down. And there's nothing wrong with being real, being vulnerable,
Yep.
being open with your team. We're all human and we're all going through these situations together.
Hmm.
We all have different roles to play and different decisions to make. But I think linking arms with people and having that real camaraderie within your teams organically creates better communication.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Mm.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess from a trust perspective, you've got a couple of ways to look at trust, and one is organizational trust.
Yep.
That is, people want to be able to trust the company that they work for. They want, to be connected to their purpose, their brand. They want a great culture. And the important thing here is that culture is lived by leadership. If you can talk the talk all day long about company values, but if you're not living them and demonstrating them, then that trust
It's
is
gone.
quickly eroded.
Hmm. Right.
Likewise, thinking as a leader individually, building trust, and this goes back to that question that you had around if I ask too many questions or check in too often, am I appearing like I'm micromanaging? And I think the key here is to lead at your level. So if you have a team, if I think about myself as a leader and my team, I've got an amazing group of some junior and some very senior business consultants that are extremely professional at what they do.
Yep.
So when I think about leading at my level is to know when to step in to provide support and when to leave people to their own devices. And I
Hmm.
think, to be a little emotionally intelligent around the needs of people and importantly, asking questions. I always ask new team members when they come on board, what does great support look like for you?
Yeah. Right.
Um, do you like me to check in once a week, or do you want to just have more casual, frequent conversations? Everyone has a different style and a different way of working. And I think it's important that we take the time to ask those questions. And in a way, it makes it easier because then people feel like they're being heard as they should be. We all want to be heard. And that the approach is individualized, to the best of your ability when it comes to communicating with your team.
Yeah, and we had this thing around in the last session we did last week on Friday around the importance of asking really great questions, and
Yeah.
leaders have to truly know what are the right questions to ask at the right time. That's great leadership, and it's almost by asking questions. Not only can you better support them, but get them to have a different perspective as well, which is really what we want to get deeper into. The moment you have a better understanding of why they're thinking what they're thinking, as well as it enables you to better lead properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And there's actually, just in a few slides' time, I've got a little bank of questions that can be really great when trying to be compassionate towards others as leaders, particularly during this challenging time. All of us have stories of what's happening to us personally in our lives. People have partners who have lost their jobs. People are going through pay cuts.
Yeah.
People have sick relatives that they can't go and visit. There are so many different scenarios playing out in people's personal lives
Yes.
that without having that compassion can really impact people's performance at work if they feel like that part of them is not being understood.
Yeah. Absolutely. Very critical. Totally agree.
Mm.
And when you're saying
So
avoiding holding on to things that others should be trusted to do, what does that exactly mean?
I think that is all about, it's all about not micromanaging.
Oh, it's
You
empowerment.
know,
Yeah.
it is empowerment. I trust you that you show up and you take ownership and responsibility and accountability for what it is that you need to do. And if you need me to help you, I am here.
Right. Got it.
But I'm not going to step in and fix a problem. I think as a leader, it's great to empower people to come to you with a solution, not a problem.
Yes. Yes.
Being solutions focused helps people think independently and not be lazy in their decision making. It's very easy for us, so I'll just go to my manager and they can come up with the answer. But I don't think that creates empowering thinking.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's really more about empowerment and letting people get on with what they need to do, and then maybe create a feedback loop of some sort that enables them to check in and see where they're at.
Absolutely, and that's those focused, frequent conversations.
Yes.
We actually have a conversation framework that we talk about at Gallup, and there's lots of levels, that you can check in as a manager. You can have those quick connects, which are little moments where you're chatting on your online chat, if you're using Microsoft Teams or whatever you're using at work.
Yes.
Great way to do quick connects with people, quick phone calls. Then you've got your scheduled, more regular monthly catch-ups. Then you've got your performance conversations around development opportunities and looking forward, not back. We're really big at Gallup in talking about future outcomes rather than, well, 6 months ago you did this and you really shouldn't have. If someone does something they shouldn't have done in the moment, they need feedback, not 6 months later.
Correct.
Because it just doesn't
work.
We want to be able to adjust our course quickly and be agile, and those regular conversations help with that.
Agreed. Okay, interesting.
So thinking about compassion, obviously this is about people feeling appreciated and cared for. And it's really important too to not forget that as leaders, we also need to feel appreciated and cared for. And that piece is often missed. I feel sometimes we can feel like we're shouldering everybody else's concerns and worries and challenges. How do we as leaders have a safe space to be able to share those things with others? And I think, leaders getting together and sharing their own stories can be really powerful. I'm fortunate to have great relationships with the regional directors all through Asia at Gallup, and I guess we use those relationships as our support network for one another.
Yes.
Where we can go and talk about the challenges that we have, because that's really important too. I mean, we're all under a lot of pressure. And
so how does that compassion, I've seen the leaders burn out in a big way because of they're just going, and they're really attached to their work because of their personally committed to it to that degree. So what is that self-compassion, and how do you actually enable that to happen in the workplace? And the leader's burning out and he's overstressed out and doing a lot more than he probably should be. How do you demonstrate that how do you inspire them to be more compassionate towards the self? I think self-compassion in my experience has been the hardest thing for me. So it's the hardest thing to do, right? That self-love piece, right?
Oh, it is the hardest thing to do. And often, if you are a good leader, you are naturally very compassionate towards others.
Yes.
You're there to give, to serve, to help, to support. It's a bit like being a parent in a way, as in, that's not to be condescending. As a parent, we have to shoulder all the responsibility as well. And sometimes I know as a single mother, where's the time for me? Where's the time for me to look after me? And I think as leaders, we have a responsibility to actually show compassion to ourselves, to demonstrate that it's okay for others to look after themselves. And I think well-being is a critical point
Yeah,
here.
right.
When we talk about well-being, we talk about a whole gamut of factors that contribute to well-being. It's not just going for a run 3 times a week. It's financial well-being, community well-being. There's a whole range of things that can help us feel great as people. And I think as leaders, if we don't take responsibility in looking after ourselves and our health and well-being and putting boundaries, reasonable boundaries around having some time to yourself,
Yeah.
whether that be to strategize about work or just to have some personal time, both is equally as important, because there's so much noise that is in our faces every day, and I think we need quiet space
Space. Yeah. I think one of
to
my
look
favorite
after.
CEOs is the CEO of LinkedIn, Jeff Weiner. Amazing guy, and he actually diarizes literally one hour every day to do nothing and to contemplate and to actually give himself some space to, and compassion would be a part of that. It's like I need to think things through. It's a really important part of my daily routine. So that probably was
Yeah,
compassion. There's a bit of self-compassion there to block everybody out for some time.
yes, and I very much relate to that. I need my quiet thinking time. That's when my great ideas come and
Yes.
my clarity of thought. There's
Yes.
just, and I think it's okay sometimes just to say no. I think there's this expectation that you've got to show up to absolutely everything. And as part of building that trust and compassion with your team, I think you see it come back to you when you need that time. I know I took a few days off recently, and I just had the most amazing supportive team that were putting their hands up saying, I'll look after your emails, I'll look after your clients, I'll look after this, and you just switch off. And I was so grateful for that. It was
Yeah.
only a couple of days. I did not look at technology for 2 days, and it
Brilliant.
was just bliss.
Yeah, brilliant.
Uh,
You got a great team who looks after you. That's awesome.
and yeah, because I think we all look after each other. So
Yeah, great.
what goes around comes around, as they say.
Absolutely, that's spot on. You're spot on. So when you're talking from a leader's perspective, I guess is that what you mean with the team as well, in terms of getting them to be more compassionate on them, to actually give them a bit more slack, like in terms of actually if they're not getting stuff done, or they're not on time with a delivery or output or something, it's literally giving them some space to say it's okay. We're working in different times now. It's not the off business as usual like it used to be. So what does other activities of compassion for your teammates look like?
I think it's being thoughtful and being able to recognise others for the role that they play in supporting us.
Uh,
So I think about us as a sales uh, team, very driven bunch of individuals, very focused, sometimes very independent thinkers. They're there to achieve what they need to achieve,
yep.
but to take a step back and be mindful and compassionate around all the others in our organisation that make our job possible,
Yes.
and be compassionate towards them. That also then creates um, a more cohesive team in broader areas of the business, not just within my team. And that it just creates such a lovely culture when people look out for us,
Yep.
each other.
Agreed.
Had a colleague who had a sick child, and people just turned up on a doorstep with meals, and everyone was so compassionate towards her as a colleague.
Yep.
Um,
Awesome.
and yeah, it's a lovely thing that makes the tough times at work, because we all have those,
Correct.
more manageable because you care about people.
Agreed.
Basic human needs, I think, is what that is.
It really isn't rocket science if you think about it. So,
No, but we get so caught up in the doing, don't
yeah,
we?
correct. I agree. Awesome. Interesting
Um,
research there on Gallup's research.
yeah, and again, as you say, it's not rocket science. It is a common sense approach,
Hmm.
but there is often a feeling, you know, if you think about compassion, um, in particular, there is a perception that you're a bit of a softie if
Yep.
you're overly compassionate as a leader. But our research actually shows that being caring as a leader is actually linked. We've been able to prove that it's linked to hard business outcomes.
Hmm.
And that's through the work we do measuring employee engagement and understanding what managers, those great managers, how they impact performance. So whether that be retention, higher engagement with customers, more productivity, links to profitability. So it's not just about being soft and fluffy.
Yes.
There's actually a science that says if you can do these things well, your people will perform better and you will have happier workforce.
Agreed. 100%. Absolutely right. Okay. So,
Mm.
is this the next slide around the showing feeling, or?
Yeah, exactly. Just on number 14 there. So these were some of those questions that I mentioned about reflecting on words that you hear.
Ah, yes.
Um, so I think being a great listener is really important. Uh, a great question, instead of saying, how are you? Or how are you doing today?
Yep.
How about, how are you feeling at the moment? And that emotive question allows people to be a little more open with how they are feeling, because automatically if someone says, how are you? You go, I'm fine, thanks.
Yeah.
Um, but it doesn't ever get to the root of
What's
how
really
you are feeling. If someone
what?
asked me, how am I feeling today? I'd say, I'm feeling I'm feeling pretty good today. I'm feeling happy, or I'm actually, no, I had a bad weekend and I'm feeling a bit flat. I think that allows us as a leader to understand where people are at, and it gives us an opportunity to
Yep.
help them feel better. You know, how can I help you? What what can I do to help you get to a great outcome?
Get it. Yeah.
How can I support you through that? Those
Absolutely.
questions are very
Important.
powerful.
Yep. Just a second here, Danielle. Kieran, can you just check the video feed, please?
Yes, what's the feedback, please?
Just from Danielle, she can't. Catalina.
Yeah, her audio coming to us is jaggy.
All right. So I can't see Danielle here on my video anymore. On my TV screen. On my laptop, sorry.
Well, I'm sending it. Do you want to ask Kat what's going on? Because
Okay, that's fine. We'll continue. Sorry, Danielle. Just a little bit tech thing there. Right, so
That's
these are
okay.
the words that you're. So the feeling piece, I think that's probably the last thing people. I don't hear many people saying, "Oh, I had an average weekend," or really feeling crap, unless they have a hangover or something. It just doesn't. Nobody really shares what really they're feeling. It's always, "Yeah, I'm fine, thank you," and that's pretty much the standard response everywhere you get, right?
Yeah. And I think the only way as a leader, look, I really live and breathe this. I think anyone in my team would know that I'm the first to put my hand up if I'm feeling a bit fragile, or, I've had
Yes.
something tough's happened, or even to talk about life experiences and things that have happened to me through my life that have presented, a lot of challenge or a lot of pain. Um, I think it's really empowering to be able to talk about that
Agreed.
and acknowledge acknowledge that, particularly when it comes to people's mental well-being. Today we had a team meeting with our whole Sydney and Melbourne office, and we talked about goals and goal setting, and it was really interesting to hear how so many people were really focusing on their mental well-being right now,
Yes.
and who were actually really comfortable in sharing, I had a bout of depression last year, or, I have struggled with anxiety in the past,
Yep.
or I am feeling a bit depressed right now. And 10 years ago, you would never, ever have uttered those words
Yep.
because that was a sign of weakness.
Yep.
And it's not.
So
It's the
true. I mean,
reality we all
yeah, I think the whole mental health issue with COVID-19 is actually, I see mental health as the bigger risk than COVID itself. It's pretty controversial, I know, but I think that the people that I know of struggling, and I know that Lifeline has a 40% increase in mental health related calls, so it's really a major issue. So it's great that in some way it's being brought up because people need to vocalize it much more. So hopefully now is the time for people to be more vocal about it, so that when things do get back to whatever normal looks like, at least there's some conversation around truly how you're feeling. If you're not feeling great emotionally and mentally, it's really important to voice that.
Yeah. And some people may view it with criticism. I know I had a significant life event that happened a number of years ago, which created extreme anxiety, and I had panic attacks, and it was just horrible.
Yes.
And I had to take a little bit of time off work to get myself better. And at the time, I was really open with my team. I said, "This is what's going on. Actually, it's not. I can't come to work at the moment. I need to work on my mental well-being. I had neglected it for a long time."
Yep.
And it's not until you go through something like that do you really appreciate how intense it can be. It takes over you. And for someone like me who's a bit of, I like to be in control. I like, knowing where I'm going. I'm very focused. It took away all my control.
Wow.
And so I decided that the only way to get back the control was to be able to talk about it.
Wow. Yeah, good on you. Awesome.
And so I think the more we embrace that, and we don't judge people, that just because you've had some struggles in your life, it doesn't mean that changes who you are as a person or it impacts what you're doing today. You need to be mindful of looking after yourself, yes, but not to be judged.
Yep. I hear you. Fair point.
Yeah. So moving along, I'm just conscious
Yep.
of the time.
Yes.
Just talking about stability, thinking about stability as a leader is it's so critical, and I think a great way of defining what does stability mean for us is, thinking about being on an aeroplane, which is pretty funny right now because none of us can be. But prior to all of this, we were all probably traveling all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think when you're on an aeroplane and everything's going smoothly, you're just happily getting along with reading your book or looking out the window. Everything's happy and carefree, and then all of a sudden maybe you're flying into a storm and there's great turbulence. What's the first thing that you do when that happens? You look straight at those flight attendants for reassurance, and you're listening out for the captain of the plane to tell you it's going to be okay. And
Correct.
that is stability. That's what us as leaders, if we burst into an office or come onto a Zoom call agitated, stressed, those emotions, rub off onto others, and it gives people a feeling of insecurity.
Yeah.
So that's really important that we stay level-headed, we keep calm, we think rationally about making decisions, and understand that people are essentially really emotional human beings. And if you move on to the next slide around how we make decisions, this is really interesting stuff. We have a senior scientist in the United States, Danielle Kahneman, and he actually won a Nobel Peace Prize for
Wow.
his work in economics. He's a psychologist, so he was the first psychologist to ever win a Nobel Peace Prize in economics. And what he studied was how people make decisions, and that decision making is driven by emotion way more than was previously understood.
Right.
So our emotional part of our brain, and any of you may have, I used to work in neuro leadership. I love this stuff. Our brain is so fascinating. The limbic system in our brain is our emotional part. It's something that is effortless. It's something that we just instinctively feel. So, if you think about, I don't know, what's a good example? Buying a car, for example, and you see this car that just looks beautiful. Emotionally, you go, that car's great. I'd love to drive that car. And then your rational part of your brain kicks in, which says, okay, but how much is it? And, can I afford it? Is it got good fuel economy? Whatever. And then your emotional part will go, yeah, but it's okay. I love that car. I think this is the car for me. And your emotions will take over. And we all do it when we're online shopping. It doesn't matter. We can rationalize anything. So
Agreed.
I think the purpose of this slide is just to demonstrate how emotional we are as people, as humans, and how much we need stability to calm our emotions. Because right now it's fear and anxiety. Am I potentially going to lose my job? Am I having a pay cut? Whatever it may be, it erodes our whole sense of security and who we are. When you start to talk about fragility in the job market in particular.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if anything, now it's the more time than ever that the stability conversation is so critical with so much volatility going on.
So I think, on the next slide, it says, how do you talk to yourself within negative events? And as a leader, and I remember going through this a couple of months ago, I'm sure we were all in the same boat. I was worried, and there was a lot of change, and it was happening quickly, and it was almost like I kept saying, I feel like I'm in a washing machine, because there was just so much going on, and more stuff being chucked in and switched around. And at the same time, I had to be really calm and confident that we could navigate through this. So instead of allowing that washing machine to take hold of me, I had to really say, I had to have my own self-talk, where I would say to myself, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. We're going to find a way. You've been through worse stuff in your life. We can find a way. And so by talking to myself that way, it allows me to then be able to be calm and confident in the way I communicate.
Right. So the self-talk piece is critical, because that's a small voice in the head, right? That's saying what it is.
It can be a dangerous voice.
That's a dangerous voice. Totally get that. 100%. Awesome. So it's really, so how do you bring awareness to that? And, what is it, something that they need to do to then be able to, watching that talk to yourself, watching the talk, what are you saying to yourself? What's the strategy to actually mitigate the risk of that and what it's saying to you? And is there any way of dulling it or
Well,
quietening it or telling you to shut up?
well, I think it's a self-awareness piece, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
I found myself for a few nights there sitting on the couch in my head, you know,
Yep.
worrying and catastrophizing in my mind about what could happen or, will happen or won't happen. And I pulled myself up on it because I could feel that that was creating a lot of stress for me.
Yep.
And I knew that that wasn't healthy. So I called myself out on it and said, you know what, you need to just stop thinking about it for a couple of days. Think about your own well-being, go for a nice walk. Got back into my meditation to calm my mind.
Yep.
And I self-corrected.
Awesome.
Because we're only human. I mean, none of us are bulletproof. We're all in the washing machine together.
Yeah.
But I had to try and calm my own fear to be calm with others.
Yeah, agreed. And I think for me, it's the same thing around really becoming aware of the conversation. The mindfulness practice has been critical to enable me to do that, to actually be able to see what I'm telling myself. And watching that voice in my head is a really big piece around, managing that. The self-conversation is huge. So seeing it and not believing everything the talk is telling me. So it's big.
Yeah, and that whole mindset piece really comes into play there. I'm such a believer in that fixed versus growth mindset. If we stay in a fixed mindset where we're looking at ways to blame others, constantly looking back in the past to justify where we are today, it just doesn't help us. We can't change what's happened. We can only influence what is going to happen in the future by our actions and our thoughts. So trying to think in that growth way is also a great foundation for building compassion, and hope is a big one. We all need hope.
We all need hope.
And that's the slide I'm just about to get to right now, is hope. We've just got a couple more slides and then open to questions. But so stability being important, that hope is actually as critical. I think it's about saying, okay, we've done all the things we need to do in the moment. We've been agile dealing with the challenges that we have. But at the end of the day, we are still a business that needs to deliver on its mission and purpose for its clients and its people.
Yep.
And how do we do that? How do we look forward into the future and provide hope for the future? And the best way to do that is to talk about, what we need to achieve and how we're going to get there, and have a plan to get there, and acknowledge that there's bumps in the road and things that get in the way, but there's still hope. We've all experienced horrible things that have happened over time, and we will again in the future. So it's just how we navigate through that, and I think hope's a critical piece.
I think the piece for me, hope, is I think really in so many cases especially when markets are disrupted and we've lost revenue or market share, in the events industry, we've been disrupted heavily, including all the sectors, tourism, etc. I think that's really all we got at some point is really hope. There's all the other stuff is all up in the air and big question mark. Everything's a question mark except hope. I mean, so for me, I think that pillar of hope is such a powerful piece, because without that, it actually gets really hard, even though you might have the others. I think that's at the pinnacle of, okay, it will get better. We will get back into it. It will improve. And it's all driven by hope. So it's a powerful piece.
Hope. Oh, it's so powerful. It's the thing that moves forward. It's thing that gets us up in the morning.
Yep.
It's the thing that keeps us alive,
Correct.
actually.
Correct.
Hopelessness is catastrophic
Yes.
to
So
humans.
what you're saying in the other slide is really around is the leadership, the plan, is that really helps around creating hope, or is that linked to the organizational drivers? Is that different when you're saying the four things around having a clear plan, feeling well prepared, keep me informed, and cares about
Yeah.
my well-being?
Yes. So this is part of our COVID-19. So we have a instrument that measures engagement, employee engagement at Gallup,
Yep.
and we've added this into that tool for our clients to measure organisational response during disruption.
Yep.
And these 4 points are critical for organisations to meet, to know that trust, stability, compassion, and hope is being achieved.
Right.
So to see a strong plan from leaders, and that means great communication. More than ever when you're in an uncertain time, the assumption that you may have communicated something, assume that half the people haven't heard it and say it again, because again, there's so much noise right now. To be able to clearly talk about what our plan is for the future and provide that stability around how the organisation is addressing the challenges
Yes.
is really important. For people to feel well prepared to do their work, well, that could apply to any industry, whether it be a business that's now working from home. Do you have what you need to be able to do your job well? Or in healthcare, do I have the right safety equipment to be able to show up every day? Those really critical human needs. My manager or supervisor keeps me informed. That goes back to that communication piece and making sure you're checking in and making sure people are okay, and that my organisation cares about my well-being. Well, again, a critical piece around, looking at asking the right questions, really caring and understanding that people are going through some difficult times right now.
Yeah, and I think that piece around keeping me informed is such a big one, because right now, because of everyone sitting at home, the communication is such a big part of this of engaging people. It's huge. I mean, comms is probably amped up even more so now.
Yeah, there's almost a clutter of over communication as well.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's about trying to get your messaging clear, concise, to the point.
Right.
I know as a global organisation, I mean, there's just stuff flying around everywhere. Our inboxes are crazy. So how do you cut through that as well?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true, and I think that's where the authenticity and the care and compassion conversations, people actually find that engaging, because not much of it is around.
Yeah.
You know.
And just finally talking about, what does hope mean, or how is hope created? And it's created with goal setting, with ideation, and with energy. And if you can harness that and look forward, you're going to generate hope amongst your team, which is critical for us to not stop in our tracks and go backwards. We need to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And we've got to find ways to do it in this new environment.
Right. So, and energy, you just mean you want to get just around how your behavior and how you engage other people. Is that what you mean by energy?
Yeah, I think you've got to bring as a leader a level of energy and enthusiasm to how we're going to get to where we need to be.
Right.
People are going to look for that infectious energy, whether it be through positivity or strategic thinking or ideation or whatever ways you like to engage with people as a leader, you've got to bring that energy to the room for people to really want to go on that journey with you.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, hope is about inspiring people as well. So the energy is a big part of inspiration. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. So last slide on what can you do as a leader. Just reflecting on trust, speak the truth, have some transparency around how and why decisions are made, the stability to be able to absorb emotion and have that really calm approach as a leader. Compassion around acknowledging that emotionally people have been negatively impacted by different events and being mindful of that, that people have personal lives and other challenges as well. And then hope, how do we elevate an organisation and move it forward into the future?
Yeah, brilliant. The piece around speaking the truth is, some of the things I get asked sometimes is around, what's the fine line between saying everything, being the truth, but also from a place of authenticity, and what's the fine line between being authentic about something and also then vulnerability. I don't know if it's always it's a thing. Can you speak to those things around how do you differentiate between those things? And as a leader, I'm being authentic, telling you as it is. But also, what is that fine line between where if I'm too authentic and some of the vulnerability starts to kick in, that might actually might kill the hope, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. I think vulnerability is really important, actually. I think if, in an organisation as a leader, and it depends obviously on the type of organisation, but if I put myself in my situation where I've got, a couple of senior leaders above me that those messages are filtering down, and then I've got to be the translator of messaging as a leader, and a lot of it is about translating with transparency and a little vulnerability is often a good thing, I think, because if something is impacting us on the ground, it's not only impacting my team, it's impacting me as well.
Yeah.
So to be vulnerable around that and say, that you are mindful of how people are feeling, that this may create anxiety, that if you're worried, I'm here to talk to you. You can, just to be available and be vulnerable in that way by acknowledging, yes, these can often be hard business decisions that seem to be really impersonal.
Yeah, right.
And one of the things I've said a lot recently is this is nothing personal against you.
Yeah.
This is things that we need to do as an organisation to move forward. So we need to kind of try and take some of the emotion away in order to be able to move forward. But I'm not disregarding how emotional it is.
I hear you. Yeah.
There's changes in, people's hours, or, there's just been so much that's happened in so many. I don't think there's an organisation that hasn't been impacted, really.
Correct. Agreed.
So we're all just finding a way through.
Yeah. And I think just naming that, and I think the challenge is when leaders try to hide what's really, what's not authentic, and everybody else can see what's going on, and that's where you have
they see through it instantly.
Yeah, instantly.
And that erodes trust and starts the negative banter, and then creates the toxicity in the culture, and the whole thing can just fall over.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Awesome. Yeah. Excellent. Well, I'm just checking online, see if you have any questions here. I think one of the pieces was really around vulnerability as well, was mentioned in the chat. Very, very important piece. I think a lot of people struggle with that one. But I think overall, fantastic insights here around what it takes, the needs of followers. I think a lot of leaders get so stuck up in their own stuff that they're not really looking at what their team is really looking for and needing. And the old paradigm of, I know everything versus, I need to find out more is actually a really interesting shift. So hopefully more leaders are now actually moving to that space versus, moving to, hopefully the new environment has actually created this opportunity for leaders to a different paradigm of leadership, not the traditional command and control, which we talked about. So
it's a huge opportunity. It's an opportunity for all organizations to take the bull by the horns and really make some effective change. And I know that there are a lot of organizations thinking about that, and a lot that will struggle with it. But I think that the biggest piece of advice, if I could give to any organization that feels a little bit stuck in the past and really wants to change and move forward into the future, is be brave and know that these types of approaches work. Give me a shout. I'm happy to share any research that we have on strengths-based leadership and empowering people to be accountable, and it creates a wonderful place to work, and it is empowering for all. So don't be afraid.
Absolutely.
It's the way of the future, and it's what people want.
Yeah, I hear you. Thanks so much. Awesome. That's fantastic. Thanks so much for your time. Absolutely, it was awesome. Really enjoyed that. Thank you all for joining us today. We really enjoyed having you on board. We will, obviously this is all recorded, so we will have another showing of this session in case you missed it and not on board. So we will again rebroadcast it at a different time, because I realize a lot of people have struggled to make it here at 12 o'clock. But thanks again. Really loved your perspective. And I love the thought leadership from Gallup. They do some great stuff. And thank you all for joining us again today, and look forward to reconnecting with you on Wednesday on the next session. In the meantime, have a great day, and thank you so much for your time. Take care.